experience yet. And so I live my life in this way because, I have all these values that I care about as a humanist and that I've arrived at in a secular way because I've looked at a lot of other religious approaches, a lot of philosophical approaches to morality, to ethics, and that's fine, and those work for me. And like Matt said, we don't want to drop all religious people into this bucket and say, oh, all those people who believe they're dumb or whatever. That's not the case. And in fact, some of our closest partners, the people we rely on, are religious because we recognize that the threats that we deal with here in the U.S. That are coming from Christian nationalism require religious people to push back on and say, wait, I don't want my faith to be used in this way.
So the religious nationalist, the coined phrase of Christian nationalism, is now being used as a hammer for all those who actually push back on disgusting policies like the LGBT, as well as puberty blockers for 7-year-olds. This is the type of stuff that they will call a person a Christian nationalist if they try to prevent legislation to go in favor of this, the continuation of the slaughter of the unborn in the womb. This is what he's referring to, just to be honest.
And then we can have the conversation over drinks later. That's sort of the, hey, have you guys given some...
As long as you're able to compromise on your theology and on what the Bible teaches and demonstrates to be God's standard and the standard for human flourishing, then we can have a couple of beers. We could sit together and we could talk. But for this, we need liberal Christians. Yeah, liberal Christians.
As to why your faith is so commonly misused in this way, maybe we should grapple with that a little bit.
The faith is being misused. Okay, again, we need liberal Christians. We must raise up as many as possible, those who, many of which call this program and are not even able to stand their ground because of lack of commitment to the actual reading of the text.
We can have that conversation sort of separately from the, oh my God, our democracy is on fire conversation, and we need to do something.
It's Christianity. But I was raised non-denom, but as I've gotten older, I've now become very fundamental, independent fundamental Baptist. And so I find it very interesting that that's where you started off, but you decided to change because you felt like there wasn't enough evidence.
What's going on?
Decided to change because you felt like there wasn't enough evidence to back up that belief system. Well, I've come to the exact opposite conclusion. And so cool. What was it about Christianity
So you see how immediately this is the backbone of this whole this whole platform. What is the evidence? What is it? Give me more for me to deny. Give me everything they say. They'll pretend that they're just amiably talking to people and just having a conversation, but all they care about is where's the beef, where's the evidence, where's the evidence, so they can just basically deny it all. That's it. That's what they feed off of. Denials. Again, why get on this platform?
Fundamental.
Well, I can't believe the supernatural claims of the Bible because I haven't seen evidence, and you're saying you came to the exact opposite conclusion. So what evidence do you have that the supernatural claims of the Bible are correct?
So when it comes to my belief, I believe that you can be a Christian and not necessarily hang on every single word of the Bible.
And there you have it. You don't need to hang on every single word of the Bible. Right. So a note out to the brothers and the sisters. Just because you cannot defend the claims of the Bible doesn't mean that that you should be on here, okay, trying to convince anybody. You should know from 50 miles away that someone is going to throw that at you, okay? So your very salvation is a supernatural work of God, okay? Existence, life, the fact that we are a speck in the vastness of this universe is a miracle. It may not be a miracle as compared to the what an atheist will say what a miracle is. But remember, we're not living off of the claims of the denier of God. We're not living off. We don't see from their same glasses. There's a world and a universe of a difference in terms of a perspective of reality and truth that separates the child of God and those that are perishing. Okay? So we don't have to what we don't have to hang on is their understanding of reality, of what is truth. Okay? Because remember, they cannot ground truth. So our language does not have to be their language, and we don't have to let them hold our hand and lead us in through life. Okay? We don't need them for that. Okay? They need to recognize the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Okay? And so when you compromise yourself and you say, I don't know, either by ignorance or by lack of knowledge or whatever it is, cases of which you should not be on this panel in the first place. But if you're on there and you're going to toss out anything in the Bible and not stand on the complete Word of God, know that for a fact they're going to use that against you.
Now, I believe every word of the Bible. But when it comes to being a Christian,
but see, now she believes every word of the Bible, but she just said that she doesn't hang, that a Christian doesn't have to hang on there. Okay, so that is sorts of a contradiction, because you can be saved without hanging on every word, right? Which is true in a sense, but out of sheer ignorance, perhaps. But the Lord you don't need a seminary degree in order to be saved. Okay, but nevertheless, it's not good when talking to these folks and telling them that you're going to skip to the loo on supernatural manifestations written in the scriptures and speak as though perhaps they did not exist. Okay, we don't want to do that. Not that she's doing that, but we do not want to lead them to believe that that's what we're doing.
and it's a matter of believing on Christ. The gospel is separate from the entire Bible.
That's not only not an answer to my question. That's not only not an answer to my question. It completely avoids what you claimed. I don't believe, because I haven't seen evidence. And you said you've gone the exact opposite way. So all I asked is, what's the evidence? And then you started saying how you think you can be a Christian without hanging on every word. I'm aware that there's many different ways for people to think they're a Christian. I don't get to decide who's a Christian. I don't think anybody else gets to decide it. There's over 1,000 denominations, and they disagree on every single point of doctrine. You said you had evidence, and I just want to know what the evidence is.
Okay, so to be more direct, I believe that the best evidence for Christianity being legitimate is the history that we have of the Bible, and the history that we have of the flood. And the evidence for those two things are the most strong proofs for Christianity.
Okay. So, first of all, there isn't good scientific evidence of a global flood. That simply didn't happen, and there's been no demonstration that it's possible or that it did happen. But let's...
Okay, so that's a claim. That's a claim that he's going to... That's a claim that he's going to make, right? And he's going to draw back on it just to make another claim, right? And so, because he probably thinks he's got a double whammy on her. But the fact that he says, well, there's no proof of that, there's no claim, there's no evidence of this, there's no evidence of that. Well, evidence is as evidence does, okay? Just like everything else. The climate change the 99, 98, 97, what is it, 97% of all scientists agree that climate change is caused by humans and all this stuff. The 99, the ones that actually prompted politicians to say that Earth is going to end in 12 years, all of this nonsense is based on evidence that needs to be interpreted, and not everyone believes in it. Okay? And if so, you have to demonstrate that. We both are not expert geologists, expert physicists, expert astrophysicists. None of us are. Okay? So, and we don't have any of those folks or plenty of them in our pockets to be able to pull them out on this podcast to say, see? Okay? So his claim of what is true evidence or what has been rejected and what has not is inadequate. Okay? So he cannot use that. Okay? He cannot use, all he has is opinions and assertions that these things have not been proven. Okay? That they have been proven to be false. That is the predominant in a biased scenario and from a biased opinion that he holds. That's about it.
Just assume for a second that they're absolutely, like we could absolutely confirm there was a global flood. How does that confirm Christianity at all?
Because Jesus spoke about the flood. The Apostle Peter spoke about the flood. And so it resounds, okay, along with the rest of Scripture, right? That is why.
Well, because Christianity, the Bible teaches that, and not only does it teach that in Genesis, but in the New Testament, it says that in the latter days that men would be scoffers and they would be willingly ignorant of one of the main things being the flood, and that is back.
So he's going to go off on her on what she's saying now, but it is actually a good point. Okay, the scoffers is if you're not only believing in a global flood, which is in the book of Genesis, and you're believing in the New Testament where Peter, the Apostle Peter, speaks about it and confirms it. Okay, well, then if you're a Bible believing Christian, then that is your reason. It's a legitimate reason. You can deny it till you're blue in the face, but that is her worldview. She believed it. You can say you don't believe Peter even existed. Okay, but that is, again, just an assertion. You believe it, I don't. I don't, you do. You do, I don't. I don't, you do. You go back and forth, and you're not proving that I'm wrong. All you're doing is denying. Okay, so he's going to go off at her, and he's going to try to play this game like, oh, there's no reliability in the New Testament.
By what is happening currently. And so not only does the Bible
say that,
and to go that route is a desperado effect, because here he's just going to continue to throw out what is evidence based on a number of scholars, right? But we know that majority of scholars don't determine what is true, and evidence is something that needs to be interpreted. And for all of your scholars to say that one thing happened, I can pick out another load of scholars that say that it's true. That it did happen, okay? That we have sufficient reason to believe.
If I say that people are going to make fun of me for believing nonsense, and they make fun of me for believing nonsense, that doesn't prove what I believe was true.
Well,
it believes it. What it does demonstrate is that people have the same bias. Okay, the same bias that he now holds as a scoffer. It literally places him back 2,000 years ago when Peter was making that warning.
You predicted it several thousand years in advance, and there were other things that could be made fun of.
No, and that's not a prediction.
That might even be more than a prediction. That might be a prophecy.
A remarkable prediction, especially since the Bible was written while people were already scoffing at this. So there isn't.
Exactly. There is scoffing in his time, and they're scoffing to this day. And he's looking out into the future and saying that the scoffing is going to continue. I say there's much validity to that.
Scientific evidence to confirm a global flood. But what I was asking was, even if we granted that a global flood occurred, how does that demonstrate the truth of Christianity? because I don't see how a global flood can in any way demonstrate the truth that God came down, impregnated a virgin in order to give himself human form so that he could sacrifice himself to serve as a loophole for rules that he's in charge of. Where's the evidence that any of that actually happened? Because even if a global flood occurred, or even if a local flood occurred, which is Epic of Gilgamesh, and it's what others have advocated for. Not everybody believes that the flood was covering the whole earth. But even if we had just a local flood, none of that proves Christianity.
See, now all of that is rambling, okay? He's basically just rambling and making assertions and saying and denying stuff, okay? But this is what we believe, and we do believe that a 2,000-year-old confirmation of a man who walked the earth and who people cannot deny existed, and people who follow them and died for this cause. And we've got Christian manuscripts in the dozens of in the copies, in the hundreds, in the thousands, to demonstrate the passion and the trajectory of this belief system, okay? And the changes that it made due to it in the whole Western world, okay? And today it still is very vibrant around the world. That is more than enough evidence that people truly believe these things, and not all of them are knuckleheads or irrational. He already said it, that these people are not dumb. There's a reason why they believe these things. Perhaps it's something that he's not able to see, or perhaps he is so convinced himself in his denialism that he refuses to believe. Perhaps the problem is him.
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier. You were kind of accusing me of beating around the bush, but I was trying to say that you can be a Christian and not necessarily believe everything. And so you can be a Christian and believe what it
you're
says
back
about Jesus.
you're back to not presenting the evidence. See, I can't believe.
Yeah, but she is presenting evidence. She's presenting the evidence within the scriptures themselves, and the evidence that came out because of the evidence that came out of the scriptures themselves, as a result of the scriptures themselves, on through this very day.
Unless there's evidence, and I can't believe unless there's evidence, and you can't present evidence.
Well, I said another thing that I believe in is that
So she's basically not pushing back when he says you're not presenting evidence. What she should be saying is, I presented more than enough evidence. In fact, I'm presenting not just the evidence for the faith and for these things to be true, but also the evidence that there may be a problem with your denial system, that you're not willing to concede these things, and how people can actually believe these things. You should be at least able to grant that much, but you're not even able to see this. The fact that people believe these things the way they believe them, coming out of Israel and on until the whole world, that's not enough evidence for you? The changing of lives and the passions of how it affected the Western world, that's not enough evidence for you? I mean, that is an unbelievable skepticism.
the history of the Bible. And so the Bible, the clear history that we have.
I'm well aware of the history of the Bible.
Words,
we have.
are you?
Do you know who wrote? Oh yeah. Do you know who wrote Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John? No, you don't, because they're all anonymous, and we don't.
So then, why do the books of the Bible so predominantly agree with each other concerning this person called Jesus, concerning the faith, concerning what the prophets had written? I mean, if you read the Gospels, it's obvious that the people who held to this tradition of holding this word, and the congregations that formed coming from the foundation, which was the apostles, they truly believed that John wrote John and Mark wrote Mark and Peter wrote Peter. They truly believed this, to the detriment of their own soul, of lives, right? To be fed to lions even. And this was like over 300, almost 325 years of persecution, to the point where they conquered. Rome had to shift because because of it. Okay, Rome wasn't just a little dingly dangly power on the earth. Rome was it, right? And so this Christianity turned Rome upside down and shifted it. Okay, now he can continue denying over and over again and say that the books were anonymous. That's a ridiculous account that some people try to push and say they're not sure about that, but the tradition holds true, and rightly so, that they had the confidence to continue copying these manuscripts and making copies upon copies upon copies. And we have so many of them, you can only imagine how prevalent they were when Rome kept burning so many of them. And people who were caught with them were killed. And yet we have so many. How prevalent do you think this must have been? How many people made those copies and ran off, making sure that they had those copies, okay, for themselves? This is the providence of God.
Have originals of any of them, and we have copies of translation.
Well, you try to keep on to your Bible after 300 plus years of persecution, people trying to kill you, burn your homes, and run you out of town.
They are anonymous. None of those are signed. If you think that the Gospels are signed and that we have originals, you are not in keeping with even the best New Testament scholars within Christianity.
You know, the originals would be less than important than the cohesion among those copies. Okay, what are originals going to do when they're just going to be isolated, okay, in a certain segment of a nation and scattered? Okay, why would you take precedence over the original autographs when they themselves, try thinking that any material is going to last hidden in caves and hidden so they won't be destroyed. Try thinking that that's a technology that's going to last forever. This is the mistake that the Muslims do, that they say that their scriptures was protected and it came down from God, whereas Christians demonstrate the validity and the understanding of the historical of the scriptures being passed from copies to copies, so much so that we can see the differences in those copies and recognize to the scientific level where the errors are and those variants. That is something that has actually worked for cohesion among those manuscripts and the textual evidence more than anything else.
No, of course we don't have the originals, but we don't need the originals because we have copies, and God preserved the copies like He said He would.
You don't get to say that God preserved the copy. You have to prove that God preserved the copy, and without
the copies are the ones we have now, and the copies that we have go back to the first century. What are you talking about? I mean, we've got copies from the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, the 10th century. We've got copies that stem and they're all majority related. They all read the same way. Okay, with differences and variants that do not change the doctrines and the teachings. I mean, he was talking about he doesn't believe in miracles. He should.
the original, which you don't have. What you have is a copy of a translation of a copy, and nothing about that shows that it's true. So, like, if you open up,
Look, I'll cut the malarkey. We're facing a critical fundraising deadline.
Sorry about
the election
this,
just around the corner.
Get out of here.
Well, if you open up I've got an NIV right here, which I could open up to Matthew.
Well, that's a fake Bible.
What does it say about? Sorry, what's that?
I said that's a fake Bible. You got to have a real Bible.
Oh, okay. So you're not real.
Wait a minute. What did she?
Somebody had you call in to be a prank caller.
No.
So
I'm genuine.
So you think
I'm just,
you think that you're AV 1611 only? So you're only going to go with a flawed translation that was created by a king in order to justify his divorces?
No, that's a myth. See, you're
It's not
perpetuating
a myth, it's a
about the King
fact,
James
but
Bible.
it's not a myth. I have more evidence for that than you have for anything that you've uttered yet today. How do you demonstrate?
All right, so it's obvious this is a King James onlyist person, or I'm not sure if she's actually rejecting the King James. The King James. I have no idea. I kind of missed that one. Let me see if I can scroll back.
No,
So
I'm
you,
genuine.
so you think
I'm
you think that you're AV 1611 only, so you're only going to, which you don't have. What you have is a copy of a translation of a copy, and nothing about that shows that it's true. So like if you open up, if you open up like I've got an NIV right here, which I could open up to Matthew.
Okay, that's what it is. He pulled out an NIV Bible, and she's like, "No, it has to be a King James," and that's the okay. So that's the problem that this sister is having, that she can only go with the KJV, and because of that, Matt is going to use that like a giant tunnel to go right through and criticize her. And you see, this is the problem with Christians when they have these hang-ups, and they think that they're going to get up on here and represent Christianity, but they put for themselves stumbling stones upon their witness, because now this person cannot argue using the NIV, and it has to be King James. And she literally starts now believing I would recommend, please, sister, and anyone who thinks this way, to please read James White's The King James Only Controversy book, and learn and understand, please, why you can use most modern English translations. Don't be intimidated by the variants that are there in those arguments. There are people, many brothers and sisters, who are allergic to historical understanding and critical text studies, and they don't want to use. They feel like they get weird if they have to go into the modernization, the very modern privilege that God has given us to be able to continue to learn and to be able to defend our faith moving forward. So I'm going to end this one here, and I'll start on the next video bite moving forward. And take care, and thanks for watching.